When people hear the Three Kingdoms period, they often imagine epic battles, brilliant strategists, and legendary heroes. But at its core, the Three Kingdoms period was not a myth or a fantasy. It was a real historical era in China, defined by the collapse of authority, endless war, and the struggle to rebuild order. The story begins at the end of the Han Dynasty, which had ruled China for over 400 years. On paper, the empire still existed. In reality, it was already falling apart. The central government was weak, emperors had little real power, and corruption was everywhere. Local officials, generals, and warlords began acting on their own interests. What followed was not an instant collapse, but a slow and painful breakdown of unity. One of the key moments that exposed this weakness was the Yellow Turban Rebellion. It started as a peasant uprising driven by famine, heavy taxes, and hopelessness. The rebellion was eventually crushed, but it revealed something dangerous. The Han government could no longer control the country without relying on powerful generals. And once those generals had armies, they no longer needed the emperor. Over time, several major warlords rose above the rest. Among them, three figures became central to the story: Cao Cao in the north, Liu Bei in the west, and Sun Quan in the south. Each controlled large territories, commanded loyal armies, and claimed legitimacy. None of them initially planned to create three kingdoms. They were all responding to chaos, trying to survive and expand in a broken system. Cao Cao was the most powerful among them. He controlled the north, the richest and most populous region of China, and ruled in the name of the Han Emperor, whom he effectively controlled. Liu Bei, by contrast, was almost always struggling. He lost battles, lost territory, and relied heavily on personal loyalty and reputation. Sun Quan inherited power in the south and focused on stability, defense, and long-term survival. The defining turning point came at the Battle of Red Cliffs. Cao Cao attempted to unify China by force, leading a massive army south. But Liu Bei and Sun Quan formed an alliance and defeated him against overwhelming odds. This single battle prevented reunification and locked China into a three-way division that would last for decades. After this point, the situation stabilized into three rival states: Wei in the north, Shu in the west, and Wu in the south. Each claimed to be the rightful successor of the Han dynasty. Each believed history was on their side. And each spent enormous resources fighting the others, not only on the battlefield, but through diplomacy, alliances, and internal reforms. It is important to understand that the Three Kingdoms period was not an age of constant glory. For ordinary people, it was a time of hardship. War destroyed farmland, displaced millions, and caused immense suffering. Yet it is remembered so vividly today because it produced clear characters, dramatic conflicts, and moral questions that people still debate. Why do people follow leaders? Is loyalty more important than power? Can intelligence overcome brute force? These are the questions that make the Three Kingdoms timeless. Later generations, especially through the famous novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, turned this chaotic history into a grand narrative filled with meaning and symbolism. In simple terms, the Three Kingdoms period was about what happens when a powerful system collapses and strong individuals compete to replace it. It shows that rebuilding order is often harder than destroying the old one. And that is why, nearly 2,000 years later, the Three Kingdoms still matter, not just as Chinese history, but as a human story.